presenter. So we have with us today Aura Bhattacharjee from Mumbai, India. Aura, awesome to have you here with us. Aura is the planning and governance lead with the enterprise architecture team at the Mondelēz International. She is a published author and has been honored with the Celebrity 30 Under 30 Award in 2019 and FMCG Supply Chain Rockstar by the Future Group in 2020. Excited about having you here, Aura, and really looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Jose, for the wonderful introduction, and bear with me while I'm trying to bring up the screen right now.
It looks good. It looks good from here.
You're good?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So, yeah, and I'm visible as well, right? Because it looks a bit different from my side.
Yes, so you look perfect. You're on the top with the presentation on the bottom.
Thank you so much. So very happy to be here, and yeah, it's a very cozy rainy day over here in Mumbai, India. Mumbai is known for its heavy monsoons, by the way. So this season, it actually takes me back to a similar time of the year, some 3 years back in 2017, when I had joined Mondelēz as a new employee. So I was having my induction days within the company, and I was informed that there was an opening in the enterprise architecture team of the company for which I was being considered. Now, till then, my only tryst, I would say, with enterprise architecture had been very, very theoretical in a course that we were taught in the classroom during MBA. Now, being the kind of person who always does her homework, be it for vacations or travels or interviews, I embarked on doing some groundwork on how this EA profile actually looks beyond what we were taught in classroom in a $26 billion company, which is a CPG giant and MNC. Now, I hadn't spoken to anybody from the EA team yet, because there was no one from the team in India. So I'm the only person from EA team in Mondelēz who sits in India. The rest of our team is very, very global. It's spread across US, UK, and other regions. So I was asking around colleagues in my Mumbai office itself, who were in various other teams. Surprisingly, the insights that I received from various colleagues of mine about enterprise architecture ranged from, oh, so you are going into a technology heavy role after a management degree. Interesting. Two, oh, it's just like project management. So yeah, very much aligned with your management studies. Totally contradictory inputs, right? Polar opposites. Guess what? No matter how contradictory these inputs sounded back then, today when I look back, I honestly think truer insights could have never been given about enterprise architecture. So it is indeed an amalgamation of technology and management, of innovation and business. So enterprise architecture, as we all know, it's a glue between business outcome and technology landscape within an organization. And much of it will be instantly clear the moment I start describing how it is organized in Mondelēz. So I'm not sure how many of you attended Mark's session yesterday. That was the first session in BTOES EA live conference. Absolutely amazing session. And he too had emphasized on the importance of positioning EA in such a way that business sees the value addition in guardrails rather than governance. And I resonate with him so very strongly. Now, in order to achieve something similar in Mondelēz, we had taken a design thinking approach towards shaping our EA team. We actually had chalked out who our key consumers are. So EA team should be like an in-house consulting team for a company. And business is our client, to whom we should be able to give a robust solution. The moment we started perceiving that, we were able to further empathize with business, define the what's, ideate the hows, and underscore the importance of having an architecture in place. And we didn't stop at that. So if you look at the design thinking procedure, that's only till midway, till the ideate process we are talking about. So instead of stopping at that, we as a team, till date, we ensure to get regular surveys done by the key stakeholders, not just for ourselves to further fine-tune our team, but also to communicate the value that EA team brings on table to the leadership of Mondelēz. And this has led to an immense holistic growth. So take a look at this. These are the pillars. This has nothing to do with EA team so far. These are the pillars on which the Mondelēz business values are based on. Growth, because Mondelēz is a very, very consumer-centric company. So we have consumers at our heart. And then comes operation excellence. And then it's all about growth culture in the company. This slide is about our EA vision and mission. So this is how our EA is structured. So it's aligned with the same pillars on which the business values of Mondelēz is standing. So the vision of our EA team is to accelerate profitable growth by leading the right solution decisions for the right business capability for the right priority. And this vision is standing on the same pillars that are aligned with Mondelēz business values of growth, operation excellence, and culture. So you see where I'm coming from, right? Our EA team was structured in such a way that it not only does enhance business profitability, but also radiates that communication to the rest of organization. And that is very, very important. So I'm here to talk about the importance of governance in EA and how the journey has been for myself. So here, it will be very clear once I start describing the structure in which the EA is formed in Mondelēz. So every function in our company, right, be it supply chain, finance, consumer, data analytics, infrastructure, has its own enterprise architect. Now, let's categorize these functions into vertical and horizontal. So the vertical ones are supply chain, finance, HR, consumer, data analytics, basically the areas which witness maximum number of projects. In order to achieve their targeted business outcomes, it's very important that these functions stay ahead of the game in terms of capitalizing the relevant digital disruptions, freeing up of resources to accommodate the innovation trials, implementing relevant cutting-edge technology in place of legacy applications, and so on and so forth, you name it. Now, if every function brings it new technologies without proper guardrail or monitoring, it will soon turn into what I would say a hairball architecture. And if that becomes the scenario, then anytime that we decide to take some obsolete technology out, right, or try to do some new digitalization, there will for sure be that risk that something somewhere is going to break and we won't even be able to trace it. Hence, whenever there is a new solution or a new deployment coming through, the towers consult their respective vertical EA. The EA then suggests, hold on, this solution that you are talking about, I see you are bringing in a new vendor. But there is this existing vendor in Mondelēz in another area who has similar modules. Why not extend that service? Have you checked out that yet? That could be more cost efficient. Plus, it's an established vendor, so it will be more integrated. And after all those discussions, if and when the EA gives a go ahead, that's where comes the horizontal tower EA. We call them horizontal because these are functions like infrastructure, security, integration, and network collaboration, who actually cut across all the vertical functions. They now look at it, okay, this is a scale of the project. So this one's going to need security criticality assessment. That one's going to have data integration, and so on. Now, as I was telling even earlier, Mondelēz is a very, very consumer-centric company. So bringing joy to our consumers is something that our principles revolve around. So we are always on that constantly evolving journey to explore opportunities, leverage disruptions. The reason this is even more important today is because that's how the entire sector of CPG is behaving, right? So like how we can implement AI, for example, to enhance consumer experience, or to further integrate our supply chain to make the entire manufacturing to distribution more seamless to ensure the reach of our products. It's important because for us, our product, they bring joy to your lives, and it's only an understatement to say how important happiness is today. So because of this, what happens is there's difference in the volume of projects that come through in all the vertical towers. The number of projects coming through consumer and supply chain, for example, is substantially higher than those coming in finance or HR towers. Monitoring this is very important to steer clear of bottlenecks in terms of projects moving forward. But that can be monitored only by a very tower agnostic person. And that's where I come in. So that's where I lie. I cut across all the towers, reporting to the chief enterprise architect of Mondelēz, and there I am, planning and governance lead. So what I do is I have developed KPIs to measure, okay, for example, it's a scenario, right? So this financial year, the company has established its top IT priority projects. So let me see what percentage of finance tower is actually aligned with those. Or the consumer tower or supply chain tower looks a little red zoned in terms of high value of KPI that measures how many concepts are still. So concepts are nothing but those are the initial stages of projects. So before, now the moment a business has some idea, in order to turn it into a project, it has to go through that EA guardrail process. We call it design assurance process. So it enters as a concept. And once it has got all those alignments, it finally enters the project stage. So if I say there are many concepts in consumer or supply chain area, those still look like they're open, they're in design assurance status. Design assurance is the stage in toll gate methodology where it's still lying with the EA. So I try to look at it. What are they stuck at? Why is the number high? Is it funding? Is there any possible architecture question that has been raised? The second thing is we have various classifications of these concepts. Anything that is scaling up of an existing solution would be called an enhancement. These are usually pretty straightforward ones, and anything that is classified as new capability has to go through a little more stringent EA review approvals and forums. Some of those including even leadership reviews as well. Because it's a big deal, right? You are bringing in a new software and a new vendor to the company that has never existed before. From an organization perspective, this concept heat map, which has all those numbers and all those highlights where it's going okay, where it's not going okay. When this is shared with the business leads, they know how many such new solutions have come in their area, and if anything needs to be done differently to optimize their business outcome and cost. So if my KPIs say that for supply chain tower, the number of projects is very high, but a large percentage of those are only enhancements and very few are new capability, then that's telling me a story, right? That's leading me towards driving further decisions and having those brainstorming with the architects to see if we can develop a system where these approvals can be automated. So that brings me to the other hat that I wear, that of a project manager. I'm on a constant lookout for all kind of possible scopes for continuous improvement. In fact, in 2019, I drove an end-to-end project in automating EA approval workflows by working with our vendors single-handedly. As a result of that, I got to know every beautiful intrinsic detail of the EA process thoroughly. The more I know the complexities of the process, the more aware I become to explore industry benchmarks. And then I get curious to look for the best possible solution to address any possible redundancy and transition towards a more and more agile way of working, I would say. So that's important, because as an EA team, you are being looked at as that in-house consulting team for the company. So you too have to showcase that ability to constantly evolve yourself. And that's what we have thrived at in Mondelēz. So in order to explain, so this is, I wouldn't go into the details of it, but it's a very nice picturesque description of how it works. So as I was telling you, we have ideas coming in from the business areas. Now what happens is they are termed as concepts. Now if it is an enhancement, as I was saying, or a deployment which is straightforward, it's usually approved right away. Or if it falls into a category of new capability or transformation, then it goes into the design assurance process that I was talking about, where of course if it is having like impacts across towers or geographies, or say in terms of security or integration, then all the EAs need to be aligned with that, and then it eventually goes ahead. Now, and I'm sure a lot of you who just listened to Rahul Lodhe's presentation right before, I was listening to that. So he too had raised this point, the importance of handshake that EA team must have with innovation in the company, right? So this was a process that I just described. Now what we have done is we have gone a step ahead and we have said that, okay, in Mondelēz, we have this innovation hub. So there is this innovation team that keeps doing wonderful work in terms of running various proofs of concepts. So there are a lot of areas in digitalization where they keep trying, testing and learning. Anything that is test and learn need to be very quick. They do not have to go through all of these guardrails and processes. So we have established this second mode, non-linear approach, where we have that handshake with innovation team, that they know, okay, this is an innovation, and we have those regular collaboration with the innovation team. We work very closely with them. So anything that's innovation, anything that's test and learn, that should be moving forward quickly. Now, if eventually it is a success story and we decide to scale it up, we decide to run it across further more geographies, then it goes back to the concept process, the usual process, because that's when it becomes a project. So that was about the flow. So yeah, it goes back to this process, which is again the description of the concept flow. Now, besides the concept heat map that I was talking about, there is another heat map that I work on, and that's from another area. That's called application portfolio management heat map. Now, this is another very critical area that is led by the EA team in Mondelēz. So I was talking about innovation, right, some time back. In order to innovate, an organization needs to have enough appetite, enough scope. So enterprise architecture empowers the function to see which legacy apps can be retired, so that resources are freed up to try new softwares and new solutions. So we have, for example, applications which have to be retired. We have those dates against them, they need to be retired, and so on and so forth. Now we go and see there are some apps which are archived, which means that they are pretty much actually all set to be retired, but they are still lying on the system. So that's actually blocking some of the resources. So then we look at the dates that, okay, they need to be retired pretty soon, so let's get started on it. So we call them sunset apps. So governance, this particular governance activity of enterprise architecture empowers the functions to see if they are on the right track or not, whether the actual number of apps that got disinvested or retired, sunset apps again, is it more or less than the planned number? So we have planned numbers recorded as well. So more is good, of course. So you retired more apps than you had planned. Less means, yeah, somebody has to take a look into it. So how many new apps are adding compared to the retired apps? If there are more new apps coming in compared to the number of apps retired, we might have a problem. So this is what we do in terms of governance, and that is my I would say day job. So when we take a holistic look at what an EA team does in a CPG giant, right, there are these set responsibilities of the EA team, and then there is this extended set of accountabilities. So it's very important to identify responsibility, and accountability. The former is where you actually roll up your sleeves and get going with your cup of steaming coffee. The later is where you motivate others to do it. And that's where stakeholder management and true leadership comes into play. Now, if I take myself as an example, so even better, if I take an example from Rahul's session again, there was a question somebody was asking around data ownership, right? So that's a very thing that it's very interesting to hear discussions around those areas, because that's a very good example on how stakeholder management comes into play, how ownership comes into play. And after that, if I take myself as an example, so my role had started with looking into the EA workflow and status approvals. In less than a couple of years, it quickly evolved into being that single point of contact for the entire EA team. So I started being perceived as that go-to for any kind of understanding for the team. And trust me, it's I'm not trying to make it sound very boastful, rather quite the opposite. So in fact, this eventually started making me realize that EA, enterprise architecture, is not the kind of field where it's okay for you to get comfortable in your own skin. Journey where you constantly have to upgrade your knowledge, extend the horizon of your skill sets, and take ownership. The day I realized that, it became an even more exciting journey for me. The more I engage with stakeholders, the more I get to visualize scopes of further development or automation, removing redundancies in terms of forums and approval processes, the more it becomes a growing journey for everyone around me as well. This eventually extended, and I started becoming a go-to person for even the business stakeholders, which not only enabled me to gain stronger insights into the way of the way disruption is shaping our organization, but it also gave that visibility to the business stakeholders about what our EA team is up to. And that's the bigger gain. For example, the leaderships in our company had released at the beginning of the year that I was talking about, right? So what are the top 15 priority projects in terms of business and in terms of IT? Needless to say, EA team played a pivotal role in the governance and guardrails and design assurance of all those projects. So automatically, I personally would be associated with the EAs and would be tracking the progress and get those aligned with the business leads and finally with the leadership team. And it was going on that way. Enter COVID. And we saw a substantial reshuffling of all those projects. For example, if we take manufacturing area, and I'll keep giving examples of manufacturing and supply chain because not only it's my favorite area, but also, yeah, because for a CPG company, it's a major area where things keep happening. So in manufacturing area, Mondelēz has been very, very cautious and very, very sensitive about the safety of both employee and the consumers. So with the onset of COVID, we soon had these priority projects on radar, pushing the few other projects down the line a bit. So one was like assessment of thermographic screening solution for plants and offices. And it was a big project because for that, they needed collaboration with legal, plant security, HR teams. A timeline had to be set and proper testing had to be done to ensure that the capability would read, provide alert, and provide record. So of course, the EA who was associated with that particular function was working on it. Then there was this one more, I wouldn't say it was a project because it was again a proof of concept, which the innovation team was running. So that was on lone worker accident prevention. So for example, because of the pandemic and because of everyone's safety, we do have less number of workers in the plants. So usually when people are around, if there is any mishap, if there is any accident, it's easier to report those. So in the presence of people, it's important to have those kind of devices which can give alert, and they are more of wearable devices which can monitor and prevent accidents. So that's more of a test and learn, and that's where innovation is driving it. But that's also something that our enterprise architecture team is also closely working with it. That's how I know about it. So having monitored the progress of all of these very closely, I now know I have a very good visualization of how the industry is bracing itself to face this pandemic. And that's just one example of how I have a visibility of how the industry is behaving in terms of a disruption. This reminds me of a story. Before my MBA, I was working with a procurement consulting firm. So Mondelēz is my fourth job, by the way. So I worked in 3 different companies across programming, consulting, and data analytics sectors before my management and after my engineering. So that consulting experience was wonderful for me in terms of having hands-on experience in analyzing business and trading scenario, because based on that I had to provide advice to Fortune 500 clients. So I was a consultant in specialty chemicals domain. So one major project that I did for a CPG leader was the CPG leader wanted to understand what would be a right place to develop a detergent manufacturing plant for a certain economy. Now, prima facie, it seemed a certain region would be the best choice. But after my detailed research, primary research with the industry bigwigs, as well as secondary research from extensive sources and data crunching, it could be concluded that the best location to develop the plant would indeed be some entirely different location that I had never thought of. This whole tryst taught me the importance of relying on data, knowing end-to-end value chain. So if I'm supposed to give a solution for detergent raw material, I have to go all the way up and see how oil price is behaving, because one of the key ingredients of that raw material comes from crude oil. How the trading scenarios are. So in terms of anti-dumping duty, the market scenario, because the detergent raw material has a concentrated market with 10 to 11 key players, while its key ingredient has a very fragmented market with large number of small players. So back then, I had learned this key thing. If I'm out there trying to learn as well as trying to gain knowledge from the industry leaders and experts, keeping it one way is not the most efficient way. In order to accentuate the outcome of a dialogue, in order to ensure the interaction is enriching, I myself too should play my role well in terms of doing my research well, so that the person who is taking out time from his or her schedule to talk to me also goes back with some added value. So the reason I was telling this whole story is because this has immensely shaped myself in my enterprise architecture role as well. Because in EA, it is a lot about being that in-house consultant. So you are being looked upon as someone who should have information with whom the business stakeholders can have that dialogue to gain some insights. And EA is perceived as someone who would be empowered to show the light to other colleagues on what the best decision in terms of technology, the reds, the ambers, the greens, in terms of what should or should not be immediately acted upon. So all those kinds of insights should be given. So in a way, from my past experience is what I'm implementing in different perspective in enterprise architecture as well. Now back to my point on accountability and responsibility. So after managing my usual responsibility, which I called my day job, or for any EA, this is true, myself or the other EAs, we have to empower the other stakeholders. And that means solution owners, global solution owners, project managers, solution architects. They have to be empowered on what they are responsible for and accountable for. So if there is data, and I work on like extensive amount of data from various other teams, be it finance, be it anything else. So I'm on a constant conversation with a lot of other teams on, okay, this is your responsibility, get this data, don't worry, I'm accountable for how it looks like, and eventually come to me if you're stuck anywhere, or if it is yes responsibility to get it done or get it derived from somewhere. So that's the entire collaboration that I'm having with all the other teams in terms of data, and that becomes valuable for both the parties, for EA as well as the other teams. So that's when EAs are come across as thought leaders in those areas. And after managing all these kinds of responsibilities, what we perceived in Mondelēz was that in order to leverage the knowledge that EA as a team has gained. It's important to keep the momentum going. It's important to keep everyone excited about technology, to let everyone know what's happening, what's the best practices. So we have these practices of community of practice and center of excellence and thought leadership. So in community of practice, what we do is anytime we know there is something very exciting in terms of digitalization going on in the company. For example, I have worked on automation. So if there is something very exciting in that field, why not have a session with the whole company? Let the business side also know about how good we are doing in terms of technology. So it's because when business is dealing with technology, they usually won't have enough bandwidth to go beyond their own area of technology and know about, okay, like what's going on in some area. So if I am in manufacturing, I'll be so busy because there's so many things going on in terms of manufacturing, supply chain digitalization. I'll have little time left to even go and explore like what's going on, say, in marketing area. So these are the kinds of sessions which we take ownership of, where people get to know a lot about what's happening across the company. So this is let me change the track a little. And there is another story. Like after that procurement consulting firm, I was with a startup who was providing solutions in terms of IBP, demand planning, etc., through data modeling and visualization on their proprietary platform. That's where I learned the skill of data cleansing and dimensional modeling, and the art of deriving stories out of initially raw, unstructured data and drive business decisions from them. So that is in no way something very different that I'm from something that I'm doing in the EA team right now as well. Now, so this is just to show you that every experience that I had in the past, the experiences that I've gained from there have somehow boiled down and have shaped the way I'm working in EA team right now. So another example would be like after my engineering, before these two jobs, the first job that I had joined was in programming domain. So I had to program retail solutions for clients. So for that, I would have to know the retail requirements and planning, and also the technology aspects of coding. Although not in a very direct manner, because we work in a low code, no code environment, but this past knowledge indeed it comes into play when I'm exploring automation. Also because I got exposed to retail requirements, so it helps me, it empowers me to further understand how consumer behavior is shaping the technology needs of our company, or how digitalization comes through. So today I wear all these hats, needless to say, along with stakeholder management and people management, because I'm involved in chairing most of the EA forums, which do, so all of these do full justice to my experience as well as my knowledge. And I truly see that's how an enterprise architecture team must be. So wear multiple hats and constantly drive excellence from experience. So as I approach towards the end of my speech, let me summarize some of the key messages. So firstly, the EA team of an organization has to empathize with the end users and align its mission and vision with the business outcome of the company, because that's something we have learned, and that's what I'm sharing with the audience over here, because it's only then that a more holistic approach is developed, and it's like a win-win for everyone in the company. Again, I can't emphasize enough on this one. So EA is like an in-house consultant for its company. So people management, change management, and stakeholder management, these are the domains where EAs are the leaders. Governance is important within the EA team. So in order to further accentuate the value that EA brings to table, say in terms of aligning the technology landscape of the company with the business goals, it's very important to have those governance and metrics in place, which I was talking about, because only then we know where we are going and if something needs to be changed. Digitalization is where the need of EA comes into play, but I have a slightly different perspective over here, newer perspective, I would say. So digitalization is definitely reshaping the ways of working in the functions across all organizations, across sectors. Now, while EA teams are there to align the company's goals with technology when those digitalizations happen, what I'm trying to emphasize on is you have to practice what you preach, right? So the EA team is no different. So every EA team in all organizations, EA team also has to ensure that even their processes are constantly upgraded in terms of digitalization and in terms of all the new tools and technology available. That's why in Mondelēz, we are on this constant journey to see, okay, where we can make it even better, where we can automate, where we can implement some better repository tool, and what can be done, what cannot be done. So all those kinds of things must go on within the team. Lastly, communication is the key, as it is true for any area in business. The onus is on EAs, yes, to ensure there is proper dialogues and conversation with the company stakeholders so that the eventual result is rich and valuable. And it's when the EAs start having those kind of conversations, it's then that the other people also see value in approaching them and having those conversations as well. So this actually just reminds me of a very funny story. So by now everyone has understood I'm a very storytelling kind of person. So it just reminds me that in Mondelēz we have a very good gym, by the way, and we have two very good trainers, wonderful instructors. So I'm sorely missing those right now because of the pandemic, because gyms are closed and no going to office. So one of the instructors was telling me this fun story. So in a gym where he used to train before, right? So he got a very enthusiastic client. The person had come in and he approached the instructor and he said, you know, I want to develop my biceps and triceps. So show me some good exercise and I want to develop it fast, a month or so. So the instructor gave him this exercise, which is there on screen. So he showed him with the right hand and he said that, yeah, so you have to do 15 repetitions and on both your hands, and let us meet after 1 month and let's see how much you have gone, and I can decide whether I can improve, like raise your repetitions or weight and so on. So 1 month went by. When the instructor met this client and asked him how it was, the client said it was wonderful, I loved it. So for the entire month I did it with the right hand as you showed. So for the next month, I'll do it with the left hand. And the instructor had a very silent moment over there because that's not what he had meant. He had only shown with the right hand, but he had meant it to be done with both the hands. So what we have over here, we have a typical communication gap. So if we take the client as the business and the instructor as the enterprise architect, so business consults enterprise architect and the enterprise architect gives a solution. The solution was correct, yeah, but then somehow throughout the period there was no monitoring, there was no governance. Now imagine if the instructor had gone in and regularly checked with his client, then he would have known, okay, no, it's just because I showed you with right hand doesn't mean that's the only hand you have to work on for now. So work on both the hands. So that could have easily been addressed, and instead of 2 months the result could have been achieved in 1 month itself. So that's what I want to conclude with. And after this, thank you very much for being so patient. And here are a few links that would define me. So that's my LinkedIn profile. Also, it's a day of celebration for me because my first paperback book, Dozen Pebbles Washed Ashore by Life, went live on Amazon today globally. So that's how it looks. And here are some of the links for Amazon Global and Amazon UK, Canada, Italy. And there's my YouTube channel and my author page for you if you're interested. Thank you.
Outstanding, Aura. Thank you so much for the presentation. We have questions that have come in during the during your talk, and we will bring up as many of those questions as we can during the 6 minutes or so that we have here for Q&A. So the first one, let's get on with it. The first one is from Antonio Urquiza, and he first says that I like your EA team approach, like an internal consulting entity. How long did it take, and what challenges did you face for the business to recognize the value that the EA team can bring to them?
Yeah, I would say very relevant question. So I joined the EA team 2018, and the journey towards having this evolution, it started towards end of that year. So constantly throughout that year, we had been, and I'm sure even before that, there had been a lot of brainstorming. So the thing is, it was recognized very fast and actions were being taken. So I would say by 2019 beginning, I would say the journey began, and it has been a very, I would say, exciting journey, because we had to take a lot of measures, and we had to ensure that we have those regular cadence, those regular conversations on business side. So we started involving the leaderships. So as of now, also, as I was talking about some forums where we have leaderships involved, so we do make sure that leaderships are involved so that they do see that value. So I would say one key thing that made it possible was governance and KPIs, because those heat map slides that I showed, those two slides, they were not in place before. So those were a part of that. So the moment we started sharing those numbers and showing business that this is where you are going, they started seeing that value automatically. So communication, which was again the last point in my presentation, and B, sharing data and sharing progress in terms of anything, heat map, scorecard, any business stakeholders.
Very good, very good. The next questions comes from Mercedes Pantoja, and she says, first, great approach. And the question is, do you place digital innovation, business and technology, business innovation in your horizontal EA structure? Where do you place digital innovation in your structure?
So this is again, as I said, it's a continuously evolving journey. So there are two parts of answers to this one. Till so sometime back, it was so structured that digital innovation, anything that has to do with innovation, right? That it would depend. So if the innovation is happening in something to do with the factory, it will come under one of those vertical supply chain tower. If it has anything to do with, say network infrastructure, then it will come in one of those horizontal towers. Now what we have done is, because defining those, so what happened was, often the innovation team would sit in Mumbai itself. So often I would have my innovation colleagues coming to me, because I'm the face of EA team over here. So they would come to me and they would ask, which tower should this fall under? So now what we have done, because of that mode 2 that I was talking about, where we have decided that we should have that handshake with innovation to make all these things move fast, innovation itself is a tower for now. So innovation itself is like a vertical tower for now, and anything, it's not a tower, because anything coming through it doesn't have to go through that whole EA process. But yeah, it's there for record, and anything coming through is automatically like moved ahead and approved.
Very good, very good. The next question that we have here, let's see, is this concept of actually back to the concept of the heat map. The participants thought was an interesting concept, and the question is, how do you balance the mix between concepts and innovation and technical debt reduction for the towers? 80-20, 70-30%. What is the balance between those areas?
Okay, let me see if I'm understanding it correctly. So are you saying if it is like main concept versus innovation, if that ratio is 80-20, or is that?
Well, I think we talked about yeah. So this is a little bit of a tricky question. So there is you talked about a couple of concepts. One was there's innovation. There's the concepts and innovation, and there is I think you use a term called technical debt reduction on the towers. And so the question is, what is the mix between innovation and technical debt reduction for the towers? Is that like an 80-20, 70-30, 60-40? What is that mix like?
Yeah, so it wouldn't, it's more like a 70-30 mix of that kind. So but again, it depends, as I was saying. The reason I gave that example, that because Mondelēz is very, very consumer centric, and because it's a CPG company, it will be different for different companies and different sector. So those mixes will be kind of different from tower to tower. So if we look at supply chain, it will be a different scenario. Usually more of the innovations happen in data analytics tower, for example, for obvious reasons. It has to be there. That's how we know how robust we can be. So that's the average mix, but yeah, it varies depending on the tower.
Of course, of course. Thank you. Well, we are at the top of our time for this session. So thankful, grateful for your sharing of these experiences and knowledge. I mean, tremendous work you and the team at Mondelēz are doing, and we can't wait to see the journey ahead and the other updates you're gonna have for us. So thank you so much for taking your time today to share all of this with us.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you to you and your team as well for this wonderful forum and wonderful opportunity. Great job here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are concluding this segment and we are going to go from Mumbai, India to Germany next. We're going to have a world expert on agile and strategic deployments sharing with us the role of agile in enterprise architecture and some great experiences that we all can benefit from. So see you at the top of the hour, and remember, our discussion will continue on LinkedIn. Enter your comments there, any questions that you have post-event, and Aura and I will be answering some of those questions and acknowledge your comments later on today. So thank you. See you at the top of the hour.